All right. Good evening, everybody. It's a couple minutes past when we said we'd start agenda review, so we'll go ahead and jump in. We've got five. Oh, we do have five commissioners here, and then John online. So you guys can go on a walkabout for recusal. Okay. So this evening we have 4 hearing items and 1 non-hearing item on the agenda. Starting with item A, it's PUD 2245 for Rodney Evans and Partners, PLLC. This is a time extension request for PUD at 3450 West Hill Road. It would be a 2-year time extension for this conditional use permit for a 7 single-family home development on 0.41 acres in an R13 zone. We are recommending approval, so we can put that on the consent agenda. Item 1 is CUP 2428 and CVA 2412 for Lombard Conrad Architects. This was deferred from December 2nd, 2024, and you last heard it in November. And this is for the jail at 7210 West Barrister Drive. As a reminder, it's a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing jail as a phased development with a parking reduction and expansion of legal nonconforming use on 22.36 acres in an MX3 mixed-use active and I1 light industrial zone. We also have a variance to encroach into the interstate setback and to waive the required street improvements associated with that jail expansion included with it. We are recommending approval with updated conditions, and so we'll be hearing that to discuss those updated conditions.
Okay.
Item 2 is CAR 2414 for Idaho Electric Signs. This is at 10100 West Overland Road. Reading some binary code there. And that's a rezone of approximately 2.5 acres from R2 A1 or AIODA, which is residential compact with the airport influence area overlay and a development agreement, to MX2 with all of those additional overlays and extra letters. And we're also modifying that DA with this request. We are recommending approval, and we can try for consent on item 2.
Okay.
Item 3 is CUP 2431 and CVA 2421 for Grisham, Hoffman, and Moore, PLLC. This was also deferred from December 2nd, 2024, and the address for this is 4709 West State Street. As a reminder, this is a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing religious institution on 3.67 acres in an R2 or residential compact zone. There is also a variance to waive the access and connectivity requirements and streetscape standards of the R2 zone. We are recommending approval of the CUP, but denial of the variance, so we will need to hear this one as well.
Okay. Hey, Crystal, that's the one that both Jennifer and I have to recuse on.
Perfect. Okay. I do think just stay in the room to be safe, I guess. I don't know. And no walkabouts, and we'll call it good.
And then who am I handing the chair duties off to?
Oh, that is a great question.
That's the hardest question of the night right there.
John, you have seniority here. Would you like to try your hand at that this evening?
I can try it, but it might be easier with someone in place there. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, unless we have any brave volunteers who want to try it in-house, I think you've heard the most of these, so you might be best suited for that.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't see any brave volunteers throwing up their hands, so you are the brave volunteer.
You got it.
Voluntold.
You got it, John.
Yeah, you're going to be great. All right, so we have 2 commissioners recusing on item 3 that we will be hearing. And then to wrap up the night, CVA 2428, CAR 248, and SUB 2426 with Brecken Land Design and the Paper Birch Townhome Subdivision. This is being deferred to a date certain of February 10th, 2025 due to unmet site posting requirements. So that cannot be heard tonight. But just for funsies, it's at 396 East Linden Street, and it's a variance to deviate from the access and connectivity requirements and streetscape standards of the MX1 zone, a rezone of approximately 1.14 acres from R1C to MX1, and a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 32 buildable and 1 common lots on 1.85 acres in that pending MX1 zone. But we'll hear that in February.
Okay.
Any questions? Bless you. And then as a reminder then, for chair, we've got A for the consent agenda and 2 as well. We'll be hearing 1 and 3, and we'll be deferring 4 to February 10th.
And meeting and minutes, right?
Oh yeah, sorry. And the meeting
For
minutes
consent.
for December 2nd on the consent agenda.
Okay, got it.
Perfect. All right, well, we've got 8 minutes until we get started, so feel free to stretch your legs and we'll be right back.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're back. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes per testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given either written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, items are placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, and neighborhood association presentations, and then public testimony. Thank you all for attending. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Here.
Danley, Moore,
Here.
Mooney,
Here,
Seha,
Here.
Horace,
Here.
Doan,
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've got a pretty short agenda this evening. We do have a couple of items for consent. So we'll take up those items here. Actually, we'll do those just momentarily. First, we'll start with, we do have a deferral. So item number 4 on our agenda tonight, that is CVA 24-28, CAR 24-8, and SUB 24-26. This is Paper Birch Townhomes subdivision. The applicant is Brecken Land Design, and the project address is 396 East Linden Street. Multiple applications of here, of course, a preliminary plat, a rezone from R1C to MX1, and then a variance regarding some streetscape standards in the MX1 zone. Those items are being deferred to our meeting on February 10th. So if you're here for those items tonight, we will be hearing those items on February 10th. So take care of that one. And then, okay. And then we'll go ahead now to creation of our consent agenda. We do have a couple items eligible for consent. Without objection, I will place our work session meeting minutes from December 2nd on consent, and also our commission meeting minutes from December 2nd on the consent agenda. Let's see. And then item A is PUD 22-45. The applicant is Rodney Evans and Partners PLLC. The project address is 3450 West Hill Road. This is a 2-year time extension on a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 7 single-family homes on 0.41 acres in an R3 zone. So without objection, I will place item A on the consent agenda. And then item number 2 is CAR 24-14 Idaho Electric Signs. The project address is 10100 West Overland Road. This is a rezone application of approximately 2.54 acres from R2 A10DA to MX2 AIODA. Sorry, AIODA. And then development agreement is also included in this application. Is the applicant present on this application? Are they online, staff? Do you know? Yeah, I got a hand up, looks like.
Yes,
Hi there.
yes, I'm
Yeah,
here.
I see. Yeah, you're here. Okay. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And is there anyone attending tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item?
Mr. Chair, we do have a hand up here. Shaylin Majors.
Yeah, I see that.
Oh, okay. That's another applicant.
I think they might be the applicant team. Is it Ms. Majors? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here with the business owner.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so it looks like staff, I think we're all clear to put this one on consent as well. Do you agree? Okay, very good. So we'll place item number 2 on consent. And with that, I will entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the following: the minutes from the December 2nd work session, the minutes from the December 2nd commission meeting, item A, time extension for PUD 22-45, and item 2, CAR 24-14. With all the terms and conditions in their respective staff reports.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Moore, do I have a second on consent?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Any further discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Teja,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. 2 items remain on our agenda tonight. We'll start with number 1, CUP 24-28 and CVA 24-12, Lombard Conrad Architects. These items were deferred from our meeting on December 2nd. Project address is 7210 West Barrister Drive. Modification to a conditional use permit, and then also a variance to encroach into the interstate setback and waive the required street tree improvements associated with the jail expansion. First, we're going to hear from David Mosier with staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The applicant is requesting a conditional use modification and an expansion of a legal non-conforming use to increase the Ada County Jail capacity as a phased project. The expansion includes a parking reduction and a variance from a service drive and fire lane to encroach into the I-184 freeway setback and a waiver from the required street improvements along Allenbaugh Street. As seen here, the project area is primarily comprised of a mix of industrial, commercial, office uses. It is close to the Boise Square Mall and the associated regional activity center, which is located to the west across the freeway. There are bus routes adjacent to the site, which includes a bus stop along Barrister in front of the facility. There is also Ada County Highway District Level 1 and Level 2 bikeways to the east and west of the site, respectively. In addition, the commission may recognize this application. It was initially heard here at the November 4th commission hearing. In summary, the applicant is proposing to expand the Ada County Jail as a phased project. The major portion of the project includes the construction of a housing pod containing 300 beds, a warehouse, inmate transfer facility for a total of around 60,874 square feet of the expansion. However, at the last commission hearing on November 4th, the discussion was mainly focused upon 2 specific recommended conditions of approval. These conditions included the installation of 133 EV park capable spaces and 23 short-term and 57 long-term bike parking spaces to be provided on site, which was based on the overall facility and the proposed expansion. As such, the commission deferred these items to the next available commission hearing and instructed the planning team and the applicant to work together on these issues. Therefore, the recent project report and this presentation will be focused on these 2 points in general. The applicant and the planning team calculated the amount of parking and EV parking for the project on just the expansion and the proposed use with this time around. Using this method to calculate the amount of parking, the parking reduction was therefore removed from the application since it now complies, and it reduced the amount of EV capable spaces to 31. The applicant is proposing 21 EV spaces since they've applied the shared parking standards section of the development code, which further adjusts the parking requirements for mixed-use projects. The planning team does not think that this development code section should be applied since the Ada County Jail was never a mixed-use project, and with the proposed expansion, it still will not be a mixed-use project, so it's not applicable to apply that section. As for the bike parking, the applicant contends the number of bike parking spaces should be based on the square footage of just the expansion, similar to how the EV parking was calculated. This would require 18 long-term and 9 short-term parking spaces. However, the planning team still recommends the bike parking be based on the total area of the overall facility, which would be 57 long-term, 23 short-term spaces. The planning team reason for recommending this amount of parking because it will provide adequate bike parking for the employees and visitors to the site, which the site historically has not provided. In addition, it is consistent with the city's and Ada County's climate action goals to provide the additional bike parking. Finally, the planning team is willing to consider alternative designs in regards to the bike parking, in that the long-term bike parking spaces just need to be secured, not covered. Look, I basically located behind the secured fence line, and that the existing bike racks and sites can still be used for short-term bike parking. In conclusion, the planning team finds the conditional use and the variance applications comply with the required findings and recommends approval of the conditional use and the variance with the revised conditions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. Next, we'll hear from the applicant team.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Ammon Taylor with the Ada County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, address 200 West Front Street, Boise, Idaho 83702. I'm here tonight representing the county.
Okay.
Just want to start off by expressing appreciation to staff for their efforts and great work on working through some of these issues. This is application of a new code to a unique situation, I think, in a unique facility here in the city of Boise, and have appreciated trying to work through these issues with them. With that being said, there is, I think, one issue that still remains outstanding, at least from the county's perspective, and that would be the EV parking condition of the 31 EV capable spots.
Okay.
I think we're in a position to move forward with the bike parking condition, and so want to focus my comments on the EV requirements. As I'm doing that, I'd like the commission just to take into consideration some of the things that the county has been going through and in terms of presenting its position. One of those is timing. As you may know, this is an important public safety project that the county has been working on, and we would like to get a decision so that we can move forward and proceed one way or the other. To help facilitate that, as you may have noticed, we have our Ada County Sheriff here, Sheriff Matthew Clifford, and our operations director from the county to answer any specific questions related to the facility and operations. So if the commission has those questions, they're available to answer those.
Okay.
We also have been cognizant of the county's stewardship of taxpayer funds. This project is going to be funded by taxpayer money, and so we're trying to accomplish something that makes sense in terms of using those funds in a way that will benefit the public and will actually result in meeting some of these objectives in terms of sustainability and alternative energy objectives. And then finally, that we're weighing those considerations against, as was mentioned by staff, these sustainability goals. The county is engaged in these efforts. Just some examples: we have a Benjamin campus where we put in electrical vehicle charging stations. We've got 2 pedestal stations there with 4 ports. We're working on a renewable energy project out at the landfill, which is converting the methane gas there to usable gas that's being put into Intermountain Gas line, and then also doing a number of photovoltaic solar projects on our facilities of varying degrees. So we are a partner in these efforts. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that makes sense and provides benefit to the public. Now moving on to the particulars of this application, the county's not taking issue with the standard that's being applied under the code. So as you may see in the report, that standard has got a 20% application to parking stalls that are implicated by a development in the application. The question though that has come up is, well, what do we apply that 20% standard to in a situation like this, where we have an expansion of a facility and a conditional use permit, and we have available already existing parking that would absorb those parking requirements. So there's not a need to build entirely new parking to meet the expansion requirements. Some of the options that are afforded to the commission have been illustrated by the back and forth between staff and the county in this particular project. I think it goes to show some of the ambiguity and challenge in applying this code to this particular application. From the July pre-application meetings, out of that discussion, we got a initial thought that maybe that 20% would apply to the new parking only. That was reflected in the notes that were circulated from that meeting, which would have meant 4 parking spots because we had 20 new parking stalls that were going to be built, with 4 needing to be EV capable. Our design team in the county moved forward with that understanding. They actually went beyond that and had 8 stalls identified out of those 20 that were going to be EV capable. And then just before the November hearing, we received the staff report that had a condition of approval of 133 EV capable spots, which, as you know, the county objected to and we had discussion on. That requirement, as we understand, was apparently triggered by application of the 20% to the entire number of parking spots at the facility, existing plus the new spots. Since the county has provided additional information, we've had discussions with staff and determined that the reduction in parking that was initially contemplated is not going to be needed or required because of more information about the varied uses of the expansion. And so we now are at a point where we are back to deciding, well, what number do we use to calculate the 20% EV capable requirement? Staff has proposed and has presented the option of using the number of 157, and then 20% of that 157 would be 31 EV capable spots. That's based on the parking requirements that would be necessitated by the square footage for this expansion if it had no parking already available for it. Now, in this case, the majority, almost all of those 157 required spots can be absorbed by parking that is already available on site. And so with the 20 spots that are being built, we're going to have a total of 675 parking spots, which take care of the minimum requirement of 668. And so we don't have a situation where there's 157 new spots being built. The county's proposal would be to base the requirement of 20% on the new parking that's going to be put in, harkening back to the initial discussions that were had with staff. And we think this is a better approach for a number of reasons. One, we think this would be more commensurate with the actual impact there at the facility in terms of what the additional staff would be necessitated by this expansion. Our sheriff can talk to this a little bit more, but it's projected that with this expansion and the new housing pod and the transport and warehouse facility, they'll have about 15 to 24 additional staff that will be needed depending on the shift during the day. Also, we believe that this is supported by the code. When you look at the code, the EV parking requirements say that the new development needs to have this 20% number. We would propose that the new development in this case is the actual application that's being submitted and these new parking spots that are being built. That's the development. And then finally, we think we would offer from the county's perspective that these 4 spots wouldn't just be EV capable, but they would be EV installed. So we would go capable, ready, and EV installed, and that the public would be able to use them. And so you would have 4 stalls instead of having infrastructure that would just be in place that may or may not be used depending on where it's at and whether it gets built out. The county is willing to commit to doing that and putting them EV installed so that they could be used and meet the objectives that these provisions were meant to meet. And I believe that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Check in to see if we have anyone from the Liberty Park Neighborhood Association present. Okay, no takers there. All right, we'll go ahead and open this up for questions by the commission to either staff or the applicant team.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I think it seems like one of the bigger issues, there's a couple of issues, but one of the bigger ones is a disagreement about whether or not this is a mixed use project. And I think there was a letter in our packet from, I think it was from Lombard Conrad, that kind of outlined the basis of the argument being that the jail itself is public institutional, and then the storage component would be that separate component that's triggering this mixed use kind of exemption or condition. Is that a proper application of that in the city size, I suppose?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, from the city's perspective, that shared use section of the parking code that allows for mixed use to have a different multiplier or adjustments. That's really meant for true mixed use projects that we would see. I think the jail doesn't quite fall into that. It was always built as a jail. It's not like a mixed use. There, in that sense, there are different uses in there that we considered, such as the warehouse, for parking. I was willing to break that out, but I think for application of that particular standard, it doesn't fit. And in addition, it's, like the jail and all, or the warehouse component is accessory to the primary use at this point as well, which is a jail.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Trevor.
I can't offhand find it. There's a couple of different staff reports in here. Are all of under the city's proposal, are all of the spaces just EV capable, or are there a certain percentage that are EV capable versus EV installed?
Mr. Chairman, as a commission for staff, the code just requires EV capable at this point, 20%.
And then I guess, David, housekeeping item. We have revised recommended conditions of approval. So condition of approval number 3. City is suggesting 31 EV capable parking stalls. Condition number 4 is the bike parking, which doesn't seem to be an issue any longer with the applicant team. These conditions are in the staff report, or do we need to revise our conditions when we make the motion?
Mr. Chair, member of the commission, I believe they're listed out in the staff report as recommended conditions.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. So, Mr. Taylor, could you come back up? Just a couple questions for you. So I just want to be clear with what your position is, that you're recommending, because there was some discussion in our packet about the mixed use reduction, but you're proposing, what number of EV capable stalls are you suggesting tonight?
So I think what we're proposing now is to, instead of doing capable stalls, do 4 EV installed as opposed to any capable. That's our position
So it's 4 total.
currently. Yeah,
Okay. So the delta there
installed.
between the city's view and yours is 27 stalls.
correct.
Okay.
But based on the interpretation of applying the 20% to the new parking, what's actually being
Right,
installed.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
John, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so for this question for the applicant, so I'm confused. I thought in our packet that we got to a point where we were looking at 20% of 105 and the applicant's view on EV spots was 21 total. Did I miss that somewhere?
No, I think that's correct. That was part of the discussions going back and forth. I think this is a proposal in lieu of that. I think we're trying, I think from the county's perspective, to provide something that would make sense in terms of providing the benefit to the public. And so yeah.
Okay.
So that is reflective of what some of the back and forth was, but this is what we're presenting now.
Gotcha.
So
Great, thanks. Mr. Chair, follow up for staff.
Yeah, please, John.
David, we talked through Jennifer or Commissioner Moore's comments about the mixed use, and I understand the auxiliary use of the warehouse and all that, but is the code, help me understand. I thought the code was pretty clear. If it states that if there's two uses in the allowed uses table, then it's mixed. Do we need to modify the code, or is there, where did you find the rationale that you just explained to Commissioner Moore? I understood where you went, but I'm still kind of figuring out. The code seemed to be pretty black and white about it.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, from the staff's perspective on this, when you're looking at mixed use, they're usually two separate uses independent of each other in a mixed use project, where in this case, the warehouse is accessory to the primary. So it's not really, from our perspective, it isn't really defined as a mixed use in that sense. It is all just one use there, although they have different aspects of it, versus the housing and or the beds versus the warehouse versus other aspects. But it's all part and parcel of the same use. And that's from our perspective that as such, that section doesn't apply, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so in summary, then it's a public civic institution, and that's the only use.
Correct. Mr. Chairman of the commission, that is correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, please.
one more.
Mhm.
So is there any nexus in the code that would require the EV to be installed in the EV capable spaces? Is there some nexus, or could they potentially sit without the charging devices?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think the code base states that they have to install 20% EV capable. There's not a requirement that they install the actual, the full units in. So that's not a requirement. So there's no nexus that I can see, going above and beyond, unless that is something they're proposing at this time. But to require the EV initially with this there is a nexus for that, in a sense that it is a modification of an existing use, and through that process we can apply these additional standards, within reason.
Sure, Mr. Chair. So there's no real, once it's installed as EV capable, there's no real nexus that will require installing the actual, once they meet that compliance, or once they meet that requirement.
Mr. Chair, Members of the Commission, I don't know at what point. I guess if they came back with an additional modification and then through design review or did something different, and then at that point we can get the upgrades at that point.
Okay.
But at this point in time, all we can do is require the capacity for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
John, please.
this is also kind of a mic check for staff. Let's see if, is it a little better, Crystal?
You're still a little, it might be is it on our side though, or is it just on his, do you think?
Maybe a little column A, column B.
You have to use your outside voice, John.
I got it. So back to EV capable versus EV installed. Question for staff then. So there is no point in our new code where we are requiring applicants to actually have EV installed, i.e. with infrastructure, charging infrastructure on a new project. Is that true?
Mr. Chair, members of Commission, it sort of depends on the project and the type of use. So in residential and depending on how much residential, then we can in those type of situations, we can require that they do EV capable plus the actual units and, and do the full install. But with this particular application and this particular use, we didn't have that requirement at this time. So it really depends on the project and what's being proposed.
Okay. All right, good, John? Yep, thumbs up there. Any other questions? All right, very good. Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and open this item up for any public testimony. If you're here to testify on this item, podium is free. You're in person. We had a few folks sign up. I'm guessing it might be all folks for the applicant team. I have Mr. Taylor and then Matt Clifford, Scott Wendell, Alex Murray, and Joseph DeRozier, all part of the team. Okay, so I thought. All right, any other takers for testimony? Okay, and then we'll check it. We do have a few folks online. If you're online and would like to testify, please go ahead and raise your hand. Very good. Okay, no takers there. We'll go ahead and close public testimony. Mr. Taylor and the team, so this is typically the time for rebuttal. You can rebut anything mentioned during public testimony. Obviously, we didn't have any public testimony, but if you have a few final thoughts, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission.
Mhm.
No real rebuttal, just want to make a few final comments. One, again, just to reiterate our considerations, again, timing is an issue here. So in terms of getting a decision, that would be helpful for our process to move forward. And again, as was mentioned, as we looked at the code in terms of putting this in and then having requirements later, we just felt from the county perspective, getting them installed and providing the benefit made the most sense in terms of resources and taxpayer funds and trying to move that forward and meet those objectives. And so that was part of the back and forth. Just in terms of transparency, we were trying to come to some resolution with staff. And I think just based on timing, you got that information. Not that we had landed on that as a landing point. So just wanted to clarify that. We were trying to come to a resolution that made sense. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and then bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, we're discussing CUP 24-28, and we have two items, the CUP and the CBA, which is 24-12. And I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Torres.
I move that we approve CUP 24-28 and CBA 24-12. A jail expansion at 7210 West Barrister Drive, following the terms and conditions of the staff report.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
just for clarification, that includes the revised terms as proposed by the city.
Yes, sorry.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Moore. All right, we have a motion to approve both items, the CUP and the CBA. Tony, would you like to start with some discussion?
I think obviously there's a need for the jail expansion. It's been talked about for a while here. Both staff and the county have worked to try to bridge the divide on the EV spaces and the bike parking. And I think the city has come down quite a bit in those number of stalls. I hear the perspective of the county on the 4 spots versus the 31. I'm inclined to accept the city's position on it. I think that they know the code best, and I think that this is a need we're going to have going forward, and it is a lot more reasonable than the original 133. And as a result, should hopefully be a lot cheaper than the original 133 as well. So that's kind of where I'm coming at from that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tony. Jennifer?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm in support of the motion. I flip-flopped a little bit. I think that, the proposal to install EV outright, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a good proposal. Ultimately, however, having those 31 spaces that are EV capable at a later date could result in more EV total, if there is a nexus at some point that would require, EV installed. I think that the other piece that kind of is driving support of this decision is just because I think this expansion is requiring a certain number of spaces, even though there are some excess spaces under the current code for parking. The spaces that are required, that are the kind of are being required because of this particular application, are the ones under calculation. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like that is an interpretation of code that I agree with and feels reasonable to me. Kind of backed by a lot of logic in the staff report, that even though some of these are already there, these are the spaces that are affected by this particular application, and these are the spaces that would be required if they weren't there. And for that reason, I'm in support of the motion.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other thoughts or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Seah? Yeah.
I too will also be supporting the motion. I want to thank the planning team and the applicant for coming together and trying to come up with an updated EV capable parking space amount. The applicant suggested the 21 based on the calculation. The planning staff suggested the 31, and I am not inclined to support a number that is not a consistent calculation. I mean, granted, this is a unique situation. And then while I think 4 EV installed spaces would be great, that's not what our code indicates. And so I can't move past that. So I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
John, please.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff and the applicant as well, and their judicious attention to taxpayer resources here, because that's really what we're talking about. It's all public money, and I appreciate the staff's looking at the downsizing on the EV. And I'm hoping that in the future that the code isn't going to be that difficult for us to use when we've got these expansion projects on existing developments. It seemed like it was a little glitchy that we had to go through this a couple times to get to this solution that's proposed tonight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dunn.
I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for being willing to, the applicant, to accept the number of bike parking spaces. Appreciate that. You went right to that and accepted that. And again, I second everything everybody else is saying about the ability to work together. We really appreciate that you came together with the city and the staff's work on this. So I will be in support of the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks for the taking the time to negotiate with one another on this application. I'm also going to be in support of the motion. I think that the verbiage, the EV capable is a sort of that happy medium, right? I think the number is appropriate. That number of 31 installs eventually, right? So we're going to be installing EV capable out of the gate here. It feels about like the right number, and I agree with the comments by my fellow commissioners about finding some consistency within the code and how we apply that, and rather so we're not so arbitrary with the number. So again, I appreciate everybody's patience in working through the situation and working with staff, but I'll also be in support of the motion. So unless there are any other final comments, we'll go ahead and call the roll. Again, this was CUP 24-28 and CVA 24-12. We have a motion to approve both items, motion by Commissioner Torres and a second by Commissioner Moore. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Teha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Good luck with the project. And let's see, we got one more item tonight. This is item number 3. It's also a CUP and a variance, CUP 24-31 and a CVA 24-21. Grissom, Hoffman, and Moore is the applicant. The address is 4709 West State Street. This is a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing religious institution on 3.67 acres in R2 zone, plus a variance to waive access and connectivity requirements and streetscape standards in the R2 zone. I will be recusing myself from this item as I am the landscape architect of record on the project. And I
Mr.
believe
Chair.
Commissioner Moore will also be recusing.
I will be recusing on this item as well as I'm a former partner at Grissom Hoffman and Moore.
Okay, very good. So I will hand off chair duties to my colleague online,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
Mr. Chair Schaefer.
Yeah.
Before you take off, I just wanted to offer if Commissioner Mooney would like to take a quick moment to go over any of the responsibilities of chair or anything like that, I'd be happy to take a moment if you'd like.
Very good.
I think I'm good to go. Crystal, keep me honest.
You know I will.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.
All right, as Commissioner Schaefer said, CUP 2431 and CVA 2421 is next up, and we'll start with staff. I think Jesse Lyles, our staff.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is CUP 2431 and CVA 2421. This is a conditional use modification to expand an existing religious institution on 3.67 acres located at 4709 State Street in an R2 zone. A variance to waive the access and connectivity requirements and streetscape standards is also included. As outlined in your project report, the applicant proposes an addition on the southeast side of the existing building outside of all setbacks. The existing site has multiple access points, and conditions of approval will require the applicant to remove the abandoned drive aisle along State Street, pave the existing driveway in the northwest corner of the property, and maintain the emergency-only access from Roland Lane. Other conditions of approval will require the applicant to provide 5 EV-capable parking spaces and add bike parking to comply with the development code. As conditioned, the proposed conditional use modification meets the required findings, and further design review will further refine the site details. The applicant also requested a variance to the access and connectivity and streetscape standards, which require 10-foot wide detached sidewalks along arterial roadways or the installation of a multi-use pathway where identified by the Pathways Master Plan. Instead, the applicant proposes to maintain the existing 7-foot wide attached sidewalk along State Street. The applicant contends the site presents infrastructure and topographical constraints, and that the requirement to install the multi-use pathway along State Street would present safety issues, and that the existing sidewalk is in good conditions and meets the standards of the State Street TOD plan published in 2019. As outlined in the project report, there's existing infrastructure and sloping along State Street frontage. However, neither are unique to the subject property and are common along both sides of State Street. While there is some downward sloping from State Street to the existing church, the applicant will be removing the abandoned asphalt drive in front of the building shown in yellow on your screen and providing landscaping in that area. Designing a detached pathway may add additional cost and grading to the proposed project. However, utility relocations and grading or adding fill to a specific area to install streetscape improvements are typical costs associated with development and are not considered hardships due to characteristics of the site. State Street is an arterial roadway that has had significant planning and infrastructure investment. The attached sidewalk installed in 2019 along this stretch of State Street was based off older plans, and the development code currently requires a 10-foot detached sidewalk along all arterial roadways. Additionally, a multi-use pathway has been identified along the frontage of the subject property in the Pathways Master Plan, which was adopted in February of 2022 and takes precedent over streetscape standard improvements. In February 2024, there was cross sections for State Street adopted as seen on the screen, which include the multi-use pathway with the ability for standards to be modified with respect to topographical or other site constraints as needed. This particular area of State Street contains single-family residential neighborhoods to the north and south, multifamily complexes to the northeast and west, and there is a large commercial development across State Street with a variety of uses. There are also designated pedestrian crossing areas nearby at the intersections of State Street and Wiley Lane and State Street and Collister Drive, which provides safe access to the commercial uses across State Street, making this 500-foot-long stretch of pedestrian infrastructure a critical connection. As such, the applicant must work with ACHD, the irrigation company, and the pathway coordinator to install the required improvements. Finally, as detailed in your project report, the planning team finds that the application is consistent with the approval criteria for the CUP and recommends approval. However, the planning team does not find the proposal meets the requirements for a variance and recommends denial. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll go to the applicant. Is that Mr. Grissom? Are you there this evening?
Hello, Mr. Temporary Chair and Commissioners. Tim Grissom with Grissom Hoffman Moore, 1606 West Hayes Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I'll try to be quick because we have a line of a couple more people behind me that want to speak to this. So thank you, Jesse, for a great report. I think it was very thorough, well done. And we, in general, are in agreement with the staff's findings, with the exception of the suggested denial of the variance request. Staff says that our site does not have any unique constraints that any other site is not dealing with, and we really disagree with that. As we will show in our presentation, I think this site has enough unique things going on that we really do need some special consideration. We aren't asking for any special privilege other than to accommodate the special circumstances that we're facing. Just first off, I'd like to say that we're not against this pathway. We think it'd be great to have. And if this was a new development, or if a developer was coming in and bulldozing all these existing buildings and building something completely different, it would absolutely make sense to put it in. But the fact is, these buildings, the original church building and the house, have been at this site for over 100 years. They are at a much lower elevation than the street, and State Street over those last 100 years has really grown up into this 7-lane highway that keeps getting closer and closer and closer to these existing buildings. So I think I've probably said enough. I'm going to pass it off to Matt Adams with the Land Group to talk more about the site-specific constraints.
Good evening, Matthew Adams. I'm at 462 East Shore Drive, Eagle, Idaho. So I'm going to take you through, I just want to restate the request. Tonight, we are requesting that we are allowed to keep the 7-foot sidewalk. And we're also asking that we be given leniency or eliminate the street tree planting requirement in this same location. Now, we want to follow code. We really do. We also believe that mobility goals and tree planting goals of the city are important. Unfortunately, the unique site circumstances dictate that we cannot meet these goals. We simply cannot comply with the requirement. That is why we're asking for the variance. So I'm going to go quickly through a couple items because of the limited time, and I want to leave time. I'm going to defer some of my time to Pastor Matt Priebe so he can speak as well. So this is existing conditions, right? What you see here, we hear a lot about mobility, but the reality is we have a 100-foot wide roadway, and that is what's creating a lot of the circumstances that are unique in this location. A 100-foot wide roadway that comes up against a 100-year-old building is unique with a major canal running underneath. On what's existing here that was built recently and would be a real shame to remove and tear out is an attached 7-foot walk at the frontage and a bike lane on the road, on-road bikeway. That is the same to the east or down screen at Ace Hardware. To the west or up near the apartments, we have a 5-foot walk that is detached but it's only 5 foot wide. And then we have a lot of storm drainage facilities, and we have the Farmers Union Canal. That's that blue line that traces over the roadway, or bluish gray line you can see. Now, ACHD implemented this improvement very recently. They did the best they could. They have shared goals of mobility. They did the best they could under the same unique circumstances that we have. And the 7-foot sidewalk has worked safely for many years now. This is depicting in red all of the stormwater constraints that exist on this frontage. Those are unique to this particular site and do not exist everywhere along State Street. So we have the stormwater facilities, Farmers Union Canal, again in the blue wash that is under the roadway for the most part, but as you travel east and north, it does come underneath where the sidewalk expansion is requested. And then, of course, we have topography. The graphic to the right side of the screen shows you the roadway, and then below that, that is to scale the canal, the Farmers Union Canal. That is physically the size of that facility. And then in section 1, off to the left, you also see some storm drainage infrastructure. I will note, you see also, let's zoom in a little bit. This is the west enlargement or further up toward the apartments. You'll see in that cross section that's larger, 7-foot sidewalk, a bike lane, and then the merge lane. The through lane is 16 feet away from the curb and gutter. And so there's safety built into the roadway design already at this point. You can see an image of the existing roadway and how that functions with the attached sidewalk. Also at this location, the speed limit is 35 miles per hour, which helps with the safety features or factor as well. This is further to the east toward the Ace Hardware side of the property. That strip between the on-site curb, on-site asphalt, which as staff said would be removed. This is a ACHD stormwater facility. So you have the roadway, the 7-foot walk, and then you have stormwater feature in that location. And again, you can see the Farmers Union Canal that runs underneath the property. So the other part of this, so we're talking about keeping the sidewalk, but we're also talking about trees. So the tree requirement would result, if we were to attempt to comply, this is a depiction of how that would look. And there simply is not adequate soil volume for long-term success of trees in this location. This is an alternative route that we because we want to comply, we tried to lay this out. We tried to make the 10-foot multi-use pathway work. And you can see all the conflicts with the ACHD stormwater facilities in the red on this depiction. All right, I'm going to ask the pastor to come up and quickly say a few words as well.
Members of the commission, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight and just to share with you. My name is Matt Priebe. I'm the lead pastor at True Hope Collister Church, 4709 West State Street, Boise, Idaho, 83703. We are a church that replanted 6.5 years ago, March of 2018. We merged with a struggling congregation and took members from a church downtown to relaunch at this site to become True Hope Collister Church. At that time, we were running about 80 on inception, and this past Sunday, we had 429. And so we're seeing significant growth, which is the reason for the building. One of our goals as a church is if we were to disappear tomorrow, we want our community to miss us. We want to serve our community. We want to serve those in the direct variants of our community. We have ministry with the apartment complex to our east, and we have some members to our west in that apartment complex, and we're able to do many things. We also want to serve our community at large. We are a voting site. And we want to continue to do that. This building will help us maintain the growth that we are experiencing as a church, be able to get more classrooms for our children's and youth ministries, but it also help us meet some goals with some potential programs such as after-school programs and other things to serve some of the neighbors and the people within our community directly there. If this variance is not agreed upon, the $360,000 that is projected will significantly hamper our ability as a donation-based organization to move forward with the program as planned. And that's my reason to be here tonight, just to say, could you consider with us that financial impact in trying to make this work? We are grateful for the city and we are grateful for your service. We do not want to disregard the codes or your goals in that. We just want to find a way to work together to make this happen. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Isserman, pastor and team. Next up, I think, is Veterans Park. Is Katie Decker there or available online for the Neighborhood Association?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody raising their hand to speak for the Neighborhood Association.
Okay, then I guess it's back to us, the commissioners, for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioners, what do you got?
Mr. Chairman, I have at least one question.
Go ahead.
So I have one question for staff, and that's how often do we see stormwater infrastructure similar to this situation?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So there is quite a lot of infrastructure in general, just up and down State Street. That's, something that it's a big roadway with a lot of considerations in that regard. Typically, we don't go super in depth into ACHD stormwater infrastructure in all of our applications. Not necessarily that it doesn't exist. I think that there are some unique things with this property in that there is the canal right there, but there is also the canal up and down State Street.
Okay. And then my last question, and this is for the applicant, and Matt, maybe it was you who provided this information about how there's no way to plant trees. I'm sorry, yes. So then are you saying that there is no area suitable in that entire area to plant trees?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's a good question. So the staff had put up a really great cross-section of the new standard requirement for this roadway. And it looks great. It doesn't fit this site exactly because one, it's level, it's flat. It's like all drawings, right? It's straight across. It also does not show the on roadway bike lane. But where it depicts the tree to occur in that image would be on top of the Farmers Union Canal. Now, the irrigation district, because of the concrete box culvert, they said that they would not restrict us from doing that. Okay. However, there is not physically enough soil volume between the surface and the top of that canal for a tree to be planted and grow long-term and be healthy. So that is the reason that we feel that we need relief from that particular requirement.
Thanks, Commissioner Seha. Anything else, Commissioner Torres or Doan?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Tony.
my question, I guess, is for both staff and the applicant. So hearing what we just heard about the trees and the location above the canal, is there nowhere else on the property where the trees could go as an alternative?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So obviously we would like to keep the streetscape standards as intact as possible. The cross-section that is on the slides does show trees being there. There is some allowance to, work within the parameters of the site. So maybe that means that there wouldn't be trees in certain areas. We could put them on the other side of the pathway potentially, or other places during the site. So there is a little flexibility built into this cross-section that was adopted with the intention of trying to preserve the streetscape as much as possible.
Commissioner Doan?
A little bit more to that. So we are replacing that abandoned asphalt driveway in front of the building with landscaping. We potentially could plant some trees there. We can't comply with the street tree requirements. It's not tree mitigation or something like that where we're replacing trees. It's just the code says plant trees along the street and physically can't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Grissom.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I guess this is a question for staff. The sidewalk on either end will stay like the other property owners, it'll stay the way it is. So we'll have meander. Is that considered a safety issue at all? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, unfortunately, if you are getting a lot of these pathways and sidewalks in a piecemeal manner, like we do see some of those tie-ins, and that does happen quite frequently. We've seen that along multiple other places that have the 10-foot requirement tying into the 5-foot. So it is something that we do see, and it's just a design consideration at that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioners. I've got a couple questions myself. I think for staff, Jesse, speaking to the streetscape, the applicant obviously had some questions about, or made a comment about the 7-foot sidewalk attached, has worked safely for years, and the on-street bike lanes that are there and are operating well. But the way I understand the streetscape and the street trees is those street trees serve a safety feature as well as a vertical obstruction that protects the bikes and peds that are outside of those trees. Is that accurate explanation for the streetscape?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yeah, so there's quite a few reasons to have the detached pathway instead of the attached. Part of the reason is that it does provide that additional distance between any traffic areas and pedestrians. With a multi-use path, you could see bikes on there as well. The reason that we do have the streetscape standards, as you said, they do provide a vertical barrier. They also provide shade and comfort and help with urban heat island effects. So that's why we do like to see those as much as possible. But again, in the situation where there is that canal, there may be some room to, wiggle that around a little bit and try to get the trees where we can. But if there's not enough soil, there's considerations for that as well.
Thanks, Jesse. A question also regarding ACHD's staff report. In their comments, they deferred to the city regarding the multi-use path, but they never ever referenced the transit-oriented development or any of these plans, especially the most recently approved February 24 streetscape stuff. Can you give me a sense of why ACHD is not talking to the State Street corridor and their partnership with the city and VRT?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think that's a really good question, and that does speak to some of the partnerships that we have. I think that ACHD reviews based on some different standards for their just current planning applications and not necessarily always in conjunction with some of the long range plans. However, this is the staff report that we were provided with.
Okay, great. All right, Commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant? Hearing none, I guess we will move on to public testimony. Crystal, who do we have?
Commissioner Seha, would you mind?
Yes, so
Thank you.
we have Landon's, is that right? Landon's Lesser, if you want to come to the podium and state your name and address, please. And then Sharon Phillips is next.
My name is Landa Slesser. I live at 3036 North Roland Lane.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Could you please bring the microphone down so the folks online can hear you and start over again? Thank you. Speak right into the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
The folks online need to hear you. Thank you.
Do what? The reason that I'm here today, I already wrote a written response to the access through Roland from the church. Apparently, we've abandoned that idea. Is that correct? No access for the church through the easement onto Roland?
Unfortunately, the commission is not able to answer questions from the public at this time.
Is that still gonna go? Or
do you have comments for the commission?
I've already written a letter, 7 pages. It's my understanding they've abandoned that, and that's why I'm here today.
We can talk to you offline, but at this time, the commission cannot take questions from the public.
I can't hear you.
I said we can talk offline, but at this time, the commission cannot take questions from the public.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So if you
Ms.
have
Lesser,
comments, go ahead.
That's the reason that I'm here, and I think it has to do with the CUP 24-00028. Again, there's 350 parishioners at the church, and we don't want them coming through that access area onto Roland, onto Wiley, onto State. And that's why I'm here. I've already, did you receive my 7-page letter? You have that on
Ms.
file? Okay.
Lancy.
And I'm going to turn my time over to Sharon because she hasn't testified about this. It's hard to know whether to come in here and testify or talk about anything when you really don't know what's going on. It's my understanding they've abandoned the access through the easement, which is the emergency vehicle use lane with the closed gate onto Roland. And of course, I'm not in favor of that because we have the bicycle greenbelt path coming onto Roland, not to mention the traffic from our neighborhood. It's a dangerous area to have the church traffic come through that access within close proximity of the greenbelt traffic. And we actually opened and agreed to them using that during the State Street construction corridor. We allowed them to come through that, but it was a bit of a problem when we wanted that gate closed and for them not to access that. There was a lot, they actually took it to planning and zoning. I believe that started November of 20 and it went through January, February of 21, which they were asked to keep the gate closed, not to use that for their access to State Street. And I'm again asking that that gate not be opened for continuous traffic from the church activities. And that's all I want to say about that. So we'll let Sharon have her turn.
Lancy, this is Commissioner Mooney.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Can
The
she hear
chair
me?
is speaking to you, ma'am. The chair is addressing you.
That's fine. I just wanted to confirm that that she understands that her 7 pages of written testimony weren't part of our deliberations or in our package this evening. So we apologize for that confusion, and hopefully we can resolve this offline with staff.
Mr. Chairman, her submittal was included in the packet. It was a handwritten letter.
Was it the late testimony or not?
It would have been, no, I don't remember. It was, we had 2 submittals that were included in our complete package.
Got it. Thank you. Is there any other public testimony, staff?
Commissioner Seha, is there anybody else signed up?
You're still muted, Esther. So I think
Sorry.
Sharon Phillips was the other.
Sharon's indicated
testimony.
that she's not interested in providing comment.
Okay. All right. So that's.
We do, Mr. Chair, we do have someone online who'd like to testify, though.
Got it. Online, go ahead. Who do we have?
Mr. Willitson, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can hear
can.
you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. My name's Eric Wilson and I live at 4906 Wymosa Street, 83703. So I'm right around the corner from the applicant's project. Calling in today to ask that you deny the variance for access and connectivity requirements. My main reason for asking you to oppose the waiver request is due to overwhelming evidence that separated pathways and detached sidewalks are significantly safer than attached sidewalks and bike lanes. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, up to 88% of serious pedestrian and cyclist accidents and fatalities can be prevented simply by separating the pathway or sidewalk from car traffic. This is important as traffic fatalities continue to rise in the county, and this particular location is crucial for safe multimodal connectivity as the property abuts the State Street and Collister bus station. Several significant plans, citywide goals, and agency projects have been crafted to increase mobility choice through safe walking and cycling options, specifically in the proximity of this bus stop. These include the Vision Zero Task Force and Transportation Action Plan, the Urban Pathway Master Plan, the zoning code rewrite, and VRT's approved funding application for rebuilding America's infrastructure with sustainability and equity program from the U.S. Department of Transportation. While I can appreciate the applicant referencing the State Street Corridor Transportation Plan of 2019 in their written report, even this plan was updated in 23 and 24 with an addenda and resolution to include separated pathways along the entirety of State Street. In fact, there's been several separated pathways that have been required of private property owners east of the applicant, including in front of Interface Sanctuary, Valvoline Oil Change, a partial portion in front of Ace Hardware right next door to the applicant, and at Bluebird Car Wash, amongst others. And just west of the applicant, Edgewood Apartments has met the city's separated sidewalk requirements despite facing some of the same design challenges. Fences and constructed berms support safety for pedestrians and cyclists who otherwise would be exposed to a small drop in the topography, as that development rests below the sidewalk's current grade. And instead of trees, Edgewood Apartments has placed utility poles and bunch grass in between the sidewalk and car lanes. I don't see any reason why either in code or design implementation, the applicant should be granted the variance requested. Please support continuing development of safe multimodal transportation options to benefit nearby residents now and not decades in the future. My 3-year-old daughter will especially appreciate a safer walking route to the Collister Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willitson. Do we have any more public testimony online or in the chambers?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, back to the applicant, Mr. Grissom, for rebuttal from any of the testimony you've heard this evening.
Yeah, so first I'd like to reiterate that we are not proposing opening the back gate. We were initially, but we, after meeting with the neighbors twice, we decided they make great points that it's not worth the impact it would make to their neighborhood, and we withdrew that request. To talk about the separated pathway, honestly, we wish we could. We totally agree. Separated pathway would be fantastic. I just don't see how we can comply with what the city is asking us to do. The sidewalk in front of the Edgewood Apartments, just to the west of us, it is separated. It has, I'm guessing, probably a 2 or 3 foot wide drainage swale, and then a 5 foot wide sidewalk. That's not, I mean, I guess we could tear out a 2 foot strip of the existing sidewalk and plant grass there, but I don't think that's going to make anybody safer than they are right now. Anybody else from my team have any rebuttal? I think we're good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grissom. I think that closes the public testimony now, and it's back before the 4 of us, the commission, to render a decision, looking for a motion from one of us.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sayah.
Sorry, I have to pull up my notes here. I would move that we approve the CUP 24-00031 and deny the sidewalk variance but work with the applicant on identifying other locations within the property for tree planting. And I apologize. I think this is the first time I've made such a motion. So if I've made an error of sorts, please let me know.
So just to clarify, then you're moving to approve the CUP and deny the variance and adding an additional condition to work with the staff for tree planting.
So the variance is two pieces, if I clearly understand this. And one is the sidewalk, the detached sidewalk. And the second one is the tree planting. And so I am proposing that we not approve the variance for the sidewalk, but based on information provided by the applicant and comments also provided by staff, I think there's an opportunity to work with the applicant on identifying other suitable tree planting locations within the property if it would be difficult to do so right along the street.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was going to go to you. Thanks, staff.
yeah. So just to clarify for everyone, what you would be proposing would be the 12-foot, right? The 12-foot wide attached sidewalk. So they would replace the existing 7 attached with 12 and put the plantings elsewhere. What would have been required is right-of-way trees to be elsewhere on the site. Is that the proposal?
If I remember, I thought the map showed the sidewalk
Oh.
detached.
So still detached, just
Yeah.
not the trees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is to retain the detached sidewalk, correct? Okay, got it.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
then got it. All right, so we got, so before us is a motion from Commissioner Sayah. Do we have a second?
Second.
Tony's closer to me on the camera. He gets it. All right, second from Commissioner Torres. Any discussion? Let's start discussion, Commissioner Sayah.
Yeah, so, with the detached multi-use path, we've been talking about those for a while. We've had other applications that have come to Planning and Zoning Commission, at least since I've been on the commission and within the last year, where we've talked about like, okay, but there's a plan to construct I think it was 10-foot wide multi-use path on State Street. So while we have an existing path there, we do have this plan in place that calls out detached sidewalks, and that is the vision and that is the plan moving forward. And I support that. So where I see an opportunity to work with the applicant is on the tree planting. Because of the situation, and while Jess, the staff, has indicated that we have infrastructure along State Street and other streets, right? And we managed to work through those things, but based on the applicant indicating that in some instances there's not enough soil for larger scale trees, then I think there's an opportunity to look at other site locations or locations within that project site.
Okay, thank you, Esther. Commissioner Torres.
Yeah, I would second what Esther said. I think also, and I should clarify for my question earlier, obviously I understand the streetscape. It's a safety factor as well as it's not just to have trees there, basically. I get that. But understanding based on their graphics they used that it just wouldn't work to have trees there. I agree and I support moving the trees somewhere else if we can make that work. But the sidewalk, I agree. I think we need to follow the code on that. And I think, we've talked, as you mentioned, Commissioner Sayah, about how, I think we've mentioned it in multiple meetings about how we're revisiting sidewalks decades after the fact that weren't built in the past. And I think we need to stop compounding that problem. So I support requiring the sidewalk as the staff report required.
Thanks, Tony. Commissioner Dunn, you got anything to add?
No, I support the motion.
Okay. I'm also in support of the motion and I understood, first of all, sorry that the public testimony got a little off base there. So hopefully that wasn't a problem with me being remote. But I also hear the applicant's concerns about the cost, but I also want to emphasize that we've never been able to obviously consider that in our deliberations or approving or recommending approval or otherwise. So that's not really something that we can consider, as we've talked about many times. And this is a big plan, and the State Street corridor's got to, these frontages have to come with this infrastructure, or the corridor is not going to work. And so I'm in favor of the motion. So having said that, I think, do we have any other discussion that needs to happen before a vote, Crystal?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's before the commission, CV conditional use permit 240031 and variance 240021 at 4709 West State Street. Motion from Commissioner Sehock and seconded by Commissioner Torres. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. Staff, do we have anything else before we call this an adjourn?
No, sir.
Thanks, Crystal. Is our real chair out of the room?
He's here, but you can go ahead and close us.
Okay, we're done. The commission is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mooney.